What is the value of self-love on your confidence? Well, for me, I believe that self-advocacy is a part of self-love. Being able to stand up for yourself in times when most will crumble. Well, our guest on the show today is going to dive into self-love and its importance in building confidence and resilience. So don't go anywhere. Stick around for this episode of Unleash Your Audacious Confidence. Welcome to Unleash Your Audacious Confidence on Win Win Women TV. This show is all about sharing the tips, tools, and techniques that will allow you to step boldly in the direction of your dreams despite your feelings, fears, or past failures. To imagine what's possible for yourself and live the life you deserve. Well, welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Audacious Confidence here on Win Win Women TV. I'm your host, Alicia Couri. And on today's show, we are going to dive into self-love and the importance that self-love has to our confidence. But before we do that, because I really do have an amazing guest that you're just going to love, I want to welcome you to Win Win Women TV. And if you haven't yet checked out winwinwomen.com, I highly suggest that you go check us out because we have some amazing opportunities there. There are local events, there are global events. And if you would like to be a show host, please visit our website, redcarpetceo.com. Check it out. We have a link there that you can start your own show here on Win Win Women TV if you so desire. All right, now let's get to the show. On today's show, we have the wonderful Sarah Lee. Sarah, would you like to come join us? And Sarah is an MBA and she studied psychology and she, this woman has so many letters behind her name. She's done so much. She's so phenomenal. I'm so excited to have her here. We're a part of a mastermind group and we were having a conversation. I'm like, you got to be on the show. So here we are today. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I appreciate you having me on. Let's
And
talk about love.
yeah, we're going to talk about love and love for yourself. And a lot of people think that self-love, well, self-love is selfish or toxic or something like that. But that's not really true because they're misunderstanding self-love, right?
Yes, I would agree with that. I think, well, I hate to get right into it, but if you can't love yourself, you won't be very good at loving anyone else.
I
So,
totally agree with that. I agree with that. I had a challenge loving myself for a very long time and thought that I was loving other people, but I was just kind of people pleasing and projecting and all those other things instead of really coming from a place of belief in myself and loving myself that was just overflowing. So now that I'm not doing that anymore, I'm a changed person. Talk a little bit about why you went into psychology, why you needed so much to understand the brain and how people behaved and why was that important?
yes. So I'll start a little bit with what I do. So I am a hybrid mishmash of a lot of different things. I have a company called Coach Me Academy that teaches people self-efficacy and self-love from a business and personal development perspective. That has led to many other things. And one of the things that it led to originally before I started teaching was I started learning, right? And so I have a very unusual background. I was on TV as a kid. I hosted a TV show, an interview show from the ages of 9 to 11.
Wow.
My parents were prominent in the city that I lived in, and um, my dad was a city councilman. My mom was a prominent realtor, and I tried out for this show, and I basically got it. And we did interviews. And when I say we did interviews, I wrote the interviews, I did the interviews because I thought that was normal for a kid to be interested in businesses
Interviewing adults.
and civic work. I thought that was normal. Serving people, doing charity work. I just thought that was normal. Then what people didn't know is my parents stopped talking to each other. And we lived in a small town and they stopped talking to each other. I was about 9 years old. And that's the last time I remember them having a conversation with each other. They're both still alive. And I think I saw them talk one time when I was like 20 something, graduating from college, but they literally stopped talking to each other. So because I was this little reporter, ended up having the adult role of going in between my parents and
Mm,
starting to learn the parenting and adult role as a kid, not because I wanted to, but because there was no one else to do it. Someone
wow.
had to be in that adult role. Fast
Mhm.
forward, when I got to college age, and even before that, I started reading about psychology because I wanted to know what was normal. And I wanted to understand just what was supposed to have happened in my childhood.
Yo, yeah.
So I became a clinical psychologist at UCLA, and I worked with children that were neurodivergent, specifically that couldn't speak,
Hmm.
that were on the autism spectrum. And I was able to communicate with them. And I started to think about that. I just started to think about how people said, oh, well, these children can't communicate because they can't speak. And I was like, no, they're communicating
Yeah.
100%. It's just not the way you communicate. And because I'd already focused on communication since I was 9 years old, which sounds silly, but it makes sense
No,
in
you
the
were
story,
able
right?
to, yeah.
Is that I just got very good at it, and I studied several different fields, but most of them were communications related, and that's how I got in the position that I'm in now.
Wow. That's an amazing story. And you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And so you can see how everything kind of fit together to bring you where you are today. And it's so fascinating how you're talking about they just stopped talking to each other and you you were the communicator in the family. How did that relate to your own self-efficacy and self-love?
Well, what ended up happening, which I didn't realize, to your point, as they started arguing, let's say I was 5, right? They started arguing when I was about 5. They separated around that time. And my mom bought my dad a house a block away. So when I say they stopped talking, they lived a block apart. And I would go between the two houses, right, and talk. So
Mhm.
that being said, I looking back, like you said, I realized that I started meditating around that time. I started praying a lot, asking God to help me get through that.
Mm,
And the message I kept getting was, it's okay. I'm your father. I'm going to take care of you, like your spiritual father, right?
mm,
And it taught me to depend on something I couldn't see.
mm.
So as I got older, I just sort of assumed other people knew these skills, right? I thought everyone kind of knew this because I needed it to survive. But then what it turned into was sort of a gift for other people because I have a very clear way of understanding the way love works, especially
Mhm.
self-love and self-talk, because a lot of people know it from books or know it from other experiences. I learned it because it was survival.
Yeah.
So learning to literally just wake up every day and affirm yourself, right? Affirm today's going to be a good day. Today you're going to do a great job. Today, if something goes wrong, you can handle it, right? You,
Yeah.
this idea of self-talk is really, really important. And then as I learned to be a hypnotherapist and psychologist, which I don't do anymore, I don't do the psychology anymore.
Yeah.
I do coaching, but as I learned that people were talking about that and wanted to
Mhm.
understand it better, I went, oh, there's my lane.
Yeah.
Because I had all these tools, and most of it really is, people will look and say, well, you achieved so much. It's because I didn't have anyone telling me I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it. Right. You didn't have anyone telling you anything. So
Yes,
you had to figure it out
exactly.
yourself. That's, that's
Exactly.
amazing. Um, you know,
Funny though,
Napoleon
it
Hill.
sounds funny, but
No, I know it, but no, as a child to have that, that was such a gift. It was
yes,
such a gift. It didn't seem like a gift, of course, at the time,
no.
but it's such a gift um, to build that skill. And Napoleon Hill talks about autosuggestion, the impact of autosuggestion on the subconscious mind. And
Yes.
you were doing that from 5 years old.
Yes.
You were creating that reality for yourself.
Yes.
And so even just having conversations with God wasn't something strange for you, because you tapped into that spiritual side of yourself very early. Some
Yes.
people who have never had that experience and never understood that there is a spiritual is as real, if not realer, than this natural world that they're experiencing. They have a challenge talking to and hearing from
Yes.
God.
I always say that praying is asking and meditation is listening for the answer.
Mhm. Yeah,
And so a lot of
absolutely.
people think meditation's like, oh, that's some hocus pocus. I can't calm my brain. You can. It is hard to learn how to do, but in my case, it was easier because I did it from the time I was very little. But
Yeah.
things you can learn by listening to God, listening to the universe, listening is it's unbelievable the things you can learn.
Mm-hmm. It is. And before we actually went live on the show, I was talking about reading a couple of Napoleon Hill's books. Like I was rereading Think and Grow Rich, and I read for the first time Outwitting the Devil, and how vivid his encounter with that, that conversation he was having, how vivid that conversation was, and how powerful that conversation was. And I listen to it on all the Audible. I read it and listen to it on Audible. I'm going to listen again, because the things that um, how our minds actually operate, everything he talks about in there is in psychology books. It's in science now. And this was written back in 1939. And
Right.
now science is proving that all the things that he was talking about way back then is actually true. Like with
Right.
auto-suggestion and constant space repetition and all those things to help change your mind. So my question, and after saying all of that, I do have
Yes.
a question. Is in the self-talk, because a lot of people don't have confidence because their self-talk is not where it's supposed to be. Like their self-talk is negative. How do they shift those negative self-talk, um, those opportunities for negative self-talk that's damaging their confidence, into something else that can actually
Yes.
build their confidence?
So there's a couple of different simple techniques. Einstein said your imagination is a preview of coming attractions. So one thing that I like to teach people is that daydreaming is positive. We're taught as
Mhm.
kids that it's not a good thing to do, but I believe that building something in the ethers is just as important as building it in your life, because it won't show up properly in your life unless you've built it in the ethers. So practicing your imagination, practicing building what you want to see in your life, and putting energy and real like commitment into it, not just like, oh, well, fine, I'll do the exercise, but real commitment day after day, one idea that you let flesh out over and over again.
Mm,
That's one idea.
yeah.
Two is, oh, go ahead.
I'm just going to say that's really powerful, because you're right. As kids, we were told, stop daydreaming, you're wasting your time, and that daydreaming is bad. And I'm learning, I'm 55 now, and I'm learning that the things that I learned as a child were all wrong. Like a lot of the things that I was told, which I did naturally, that was fun and exciting and filled me with so much positivity, that I was told, no, you're not supposed to do that, was actually the right way of being. And it was
Yes,
actually the way that to success. And
yes,
and because I unlearned that to learn school and the way I should be, I
yes,
realized that I had to unlearn all that stuff to actually learn how to be more, like using those other faculties of your mind. And science has proven how the imagination and how the subconscious mind can't tell the difference between something that you imagine and something's real, when you really involve your emotions into it and you really get into it. And then you can actually experience that in real life, because it's almost like a memory now, right? It's like
Yes.
and you have muscle memory to do things that you probably never did before. So I just find that all that fascinating. So imagination, that's one of the
Yes.
higher
So,
faculties of the mind.
yes.
And you need to start re-engaging. If you stopped engaging it, you need to re-engage your imagination and get excited about it. So involve your emotions in your imagination. All right, turnover. It's incredibly expensive for any organization, but especially those that are small and mid-size. If you're an organization and you're hiring, it's so important to get it right. You need to identify the right people for the right roles. Here at Audacious Concepts Inc., we help you perfect your hiring process so you get it right every single time. Reach out to us at audaciousconceptsinc.com. Next,
Yes.
number 2.
Another one is obviously it helps to get a coach, right? Or someone to help you through
I
this,
agree. I
or a
agree.
guide. But understanding your underlying self-talk, your underlying story, right? The story that was programmed into you versus the story you would like to see or how you see yourself. You won't out achieve your identity. Not the identity people think you are, the identity you think.
Wait, stop. Stop. You gotta say that again. Oh my, that is so powerful. You won't out achieve your identity.
Yes, yes. If
And
it's
your identity
not
is who
not
you
who,
believe you are.
yes, not who other people think you are, who you
Who
know
you
to
believe you
be.
are.
Yes.
You cannot.
So you have to foster your self-love until other people see you the way you are, right? The way you are to yourself, the way you know yourself to be. And so self-talk and self-love are very important in that because there's a gap usually between how we are and how other people see us. And eventually, if you get famous, publicity, write books, or a coach on TV, maybe people will see you a version of how you are. But until that matches up, you have to sit in the gap. You have to hold yourself up.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just bring this in. I know this isn't really the topic of what we're talking about, but it does relate to it because this idea of out outperforming your identity. I wrote it down. You can't out
Yes.
achieving your identity.
Yes.
When people who don't have self-love, that they don't like themselves and they achieve high things, a lot
Yes.
of them become suicidal
Yes.
because they don't believe they deserve that, or they don't believe that that's who they are because they didn't
Right.
allow that identity to really um that identity to transform, that love to transform within themselves.
Yes. Or people that, win the lottery, lose their money, people that don't change their habits around money, which money to me is an extension of yourself. It's not
Yeah.
a separate thing. And people, when they have money problems, it's always a self-esteem issue. It's always something that's unworthy somewhere down there. There's always a wound. And you'll just have to trust me on that after
No,
decades.
that's true. That's so
But
true. Yeah.
right. But that's the thing, is that if you don't understand that you're worthy of your dreams, if you do them to please other people, you'll get there and it won't be good for you, like you said. Or people will say, and everyone kind of knows this, that someone will win the lottery and they end up broke, right? Or they achieve a lot of, success financially, but they still don't have any money. They don't have anything saved. That's all based on that same issue, where that same issue of, I didn't build a new identity around the person who has the money. Am I a generous person with money? Am I kind, right? Do I have a charity? Do I have a passion? Or is it just I'm getting money to get money, right? To get
Mhm.
something selfish. If it's just purely selfish, one, you either won't continue the goal, or two, like you said, when you get there and you achieve it, you'll be so unhappy and so miserable that you'll start tearing it apart. And people always say, like, why there's certain rich people, their money leaves them. It's because of that issue, in my opinion. It's that issue of not putting a
Worthiness.
plan together about your own identity and your purpose and
Mhm.
who you are, and knowing how you want to serve people when you have the life that you imagined.
Yeah, because you talk about service, how as a young child you felt like service was like everybody knows that. Everybody, serves other people. And it's so important because that's the law of reciprocity. That's the law of sowing and reaping. It's the law of, all those things
Right.
when you build it into your identity of who you are and you love yourself enough to give of yourself, not from like, I know I would give to try to get love, for people to like me. So I would give of myself to hope in hopes that people would like me. So that's
I've
where
done it.
the identity, I didn't build the identity within me. I was just doing it to try to please others so that I would feel worthy of it. But you still ended up empty because you never really loved yourself enough to
Right.
start with.
If you don't feel deserving of your object of affection, for lack of a better way of saying it, whether that's business or personal, not only is it way harder to do, it's way harder to get up, motivate yourself, right? Stay on task. You were talking about outwitting the devil, right? It's easier to drift if you don't understand that you
Mhm.
have a purpose, and the purpose is to serve people. And when you build a business by definition is solving a problem and selling the solution to that problem. That's why people give you money in a business. But most people aren't taught that either. So they're taught that, oh, I could just find some transaction or do this thing and it's just going to come to me easy and whatever. Business is a spiritual game in some ways. It's a not just a money game, it's a spiritual game. And if you don't have that idea of who you are and how you want to serve people, your business is a lot less. I was going to say something inappropriate. I was basically saying it's not going to be as strong. Let's just put
Yeah.
it won't be as strong as it should be.
Wow. I'm just listen, you've flawed me. I'm very, very seldom like I'm speechless. But that statement, I'm gonna have to quote you and put that statement up after the show because it's so powerful. Um, and my mind is just going in all kinds of different directions from just what you said and thinking about even just myself and how I had to purposely build self-love. Like it had to become a conscious, purposeful action of how am I loving myself? And actually I did my TEDx talk on self-love because I had to purpose it. It wasn't something that I just had to, because I had so much negative self-talk
Yes,
going
we
on,
we all do. It's more
right?
natural to have the negative than the positive. We have to learn the positive, unfortunately.
Right. So
Yeah.
it had to be very purposeful, conscious effort to do it. And um the thing the other thing about loving yourself that I wanted to ask, besides the self-talk and all of that, is how do we self-sabotage?
Oh,
Like
that's
you're saying that we
perfect.
love ourselves, but how are we sabotaging ourselves when we're trying to say that now we're working towards loving ourselves and
So,
building our confidence, but then we sabotage?
so that was literally my third point. I was
Yeah,
gonna give you three
I'm
little points and
reading,
three little
I'm reading
tools.
you. I'm reading you. I'm reading you.
We're on the same vibration, girl. We're on the
Yes,
same wavelength.
yes.
So one of the things that I learned after studying this, after reading all the books I could, going right, being a clinical psychologist, being a hypnotherapist, all these things, I couldn't figure out why people got stuck. I couldn't figure out why I got stuck, right? My first thought was, why am I getting stuck? I think I know this, that kind of thing, right?
I should know this by now. I've done all
Right.
this stuff. I know I should know this. Why do I keep getting stuck? Yes.
Like,
Tell
why am
me.
I getting stuck? And that was actually what started me down getting really important deep coaches to coach me, because I was like, I'm getting stuck and I don't know where I'm getting stuck and I thought I knew and whatever. So here's the answer. Here's what I've learned, right? And I think this might become important in the future for people. I think that getting stuck has a lot to do with conflicting beliefs and conflicting stories in your subconscious. So think of it like a wheel, right? If the wheel has a like part of the wheel sticking out, it's going to clump. It's not going to spin. But what's worse is your wheel, when you have conflicting beliefs, is going forward and backward and forward and backward and forward and backward.
Teeter-tottering.
Yes. And so you can't go anywhere if that's what's happening. So
Mm.
if you have
So
one
there's
belief
some
consciously,
incongruence.
yeah, well, if you have one belief consciously and another belief subconsciously that's pulling you back,
Mhm.
you're going to kind of get stuck no matter what. And it has nothing to do with worthiness. That has nothing to do with willpower. That has nothing to do with the way that it's been taught. That has a lot to do, and I hate to say it this way, is either you have to program yourself, and you can program yourself more easily, by the way, if while you're saying positive things to yourself, you're jumping up and down because your body's storing all of your beliefs, and it will start cleaning those beliefs out if you put physical movement with it. You have to trust me on that. Ask a kinesthesiologist about it, but the point is there's truth in that.
So I need
But
to get on my rebounder and just
yes,
jump up and
then
down.
do your affirmations that way. It sounds silly, but it really works. It does really work. And actually,
Okay.
Tony Robbins teaches that too, so it's not just me.
Yeah, no, no,
Um,
no. I mean, I believe that. Yeah, because the body is the subconscious mind, the subconscious mind is the body, and if you want to reprogram it, you have to disrupt it.
you have to involve it. You're right,
Yeah,
really what it
bouncing
is,
up
you
and
have to
down
involve it.
disrupts. Yeah.
Yes. But that
So is
idea of we think, well, I'm weak-willed, that's why I can't do it or whatever. That's a terrible thing because that goes against the self-love. It starts to repeat that story. And what I want people to understand is that it's not like that. You can, I hate to say it, you can get a hypnotherapist. You can talk to a friend. You can start writing down and journaling and figure out where your conflicting beliefs are and then figure out which one you want to give up. So going back
mm,
to Think and Grow Rich, it is true. You've got to figure out what you want to give up for what you want to get.
what you really
But
want.
I sometimes say you have to give up your bad attitude sometimes. You have to agree to give up your doubt, which that sounds simple. It's simple to say, hard to do, right? Hard
It's
for
yeah, it's
people
so not
to
easy
heal
to
that
do.
part of themselves. Yes.
You've given me so much food for thought. Like my mind is reeling and spinning. And so when they talk about praxis, like trying to reprogram um your subconscious mind with the new idea, the new habits, the new thing that you want to program into, um you're saying it helps. Is that also like praxis, like
Yes.
integrating it into your physical, like you have to take your whole being, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, all of it, and reprogram it.
Yes.
All right.
And there's sort of a fourth component, which is forgiveness practice. So
And gratitude.
yes, gratitude and forgiveness practice, but forgiveness practice is something that's real in a lot of cultures, not so much Western culture, but it's taught in a lot of cultures. It's part of um, Asian religions, Eastern religions, for example. There's an aspect where they teach forgiveness practice of you and of other people. That is one of the easiest ways to start healing that part of yourself without help or without money. You don't need money because someone will say, well, this lady's just selling coaching. She just wants me to go to her. No, I'm telling you for free, look up, right? Forgiveness practice. I can even send you some books. There's links to books that are free even on this. And the point I'm making is that learning to forgive others, when you forgive others, you also have to look at yourself and your part in things, and you learn to forgive yourself for not knowing something. You eventually will release judgment of other people because your judgment of other people is really a judgment of you. It's a subconscious judgment that someone put on you. And you said, this is the way it's supposed to be. How does that person get away with that? Blah, blah, blah. That's you. That's not the person. That's never the person. I mean, maybe
Exactly. Yeah.
them, but the reality is that's all your interaction
Within
with
you.
yourself, right? And your
Mhm.
programming. So to your
And
point, yes, you want to forgive, which sounds counterintuitive, but you want to sit with the things that you don't like, not try to avoid them. You want to sit with them. You want to love those parts of yourself, which is counterintuitive, and say,
mhm,
you know what? I'm a jerk sometimes, right? I am. I don't listen sometimes. Whatever it is that somebody might say about you, and
mhm,
own it. And then say, I'm going to replace that though with being more loving. I'm going to replace that with being a better listener. Whatever it is, that the issue is. But if you can get through that process and then forgive and let that go, you'll be surprised how much your life will bloom. And all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, that conflict isn't there anymore. Oh, that argument isn't there anymore because I'm not putting energy into it.
I love that. That is very, very true. Self-forgiveness is one of those healing things that brings confidence to yourself because you're no longer judging yourself.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's, you don't judge
so,
other
so
people. And
true.
that's such a waste of energy to
It's
judge.
a waste of energy. And it does improve self-love when you can, because I did all those things, right? When I was like, I don't like this about myself. I don't like this about myself. And instead of beating myself up about it every time it happened, I forgave. And I said, you know what? When you know better, you do better and you're learning. And so you wouldn't do that to a child. So why do that to yourself?
Yes.
You're still developing this. So you're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess up, but just have some compassion like you would anyone else. Have some compassion for yourself. Have some forgiveness, have some grace, give yourself some grace, and then keep trying, keep working on it. And while you're changing that paradigm, changing that belief.
Yes, a
Oh my
big part
gosh.
of NLP is that. A big part of a certain type of NLP is, right, talking to your inner child and working with your inner child. But once you see yourself, right, as an innocent child, it's harder to say, hey, like if I wasn't,
Pager.
if I wasn't
Yeah,
me, right? Would I
yeah,
treat a child this way? No. Right?
exactly.
Right?
Oh my
So
gosh,
you've got it.
Sarah,
You've
our
got it.
time is up. Listen, I told you this was going to go by fast. This has gone by so super, super fast. I love everything you're sharing with us. I thank you so much. I know how crazy busy your life is. You're running like multiple businesses and doing so many things and volunteering and helping people. And I just really honor the time that you've given us today to walk through some of these practices to help us build more self-love. So thank you so much. Tell people how they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Coach Me Academy, or you can find me. That's probably one of the easiest
Like
places.
Sarah, and you could just
Or
look
you can
for
find me
Sarah
on
Lee.
Facebook. I'm on
Yeah.
Facebook. I'm Coach Me Sarah Lee. So you can,
Coach me, Sarah Lee. Yes.
yes,
And don't mix her up with the sweet
the
treats.
cake. Yes,
Yes, the Sara Lee cakes. Although she is a sweet treat. She is so super, super sweet and kind and generous. So in that sense, yes, you are like the
yes.
little
I do actually have a little brand called Financial Cake with Sarah Lee, where I teach women the formula of self-love and success with money. So I do. I make
nice.
it fun, right? Why not?
Make it fun. Why not? Well, thank you all for joining us today on this episode of Unleash Your Audacious Confidence. And I want to encourage you to be bold, to be brave, and every day do at least one thing to step out with audacious confidence and love yourself. Find self-love. So I will see you. This is Alicia Couri saying goodbye until I see you again on another episode of Unleash Your Audacious Confidence. Have a great rest of your week. Mwah.